Hey everybody, good to see you. Farmer Dar here, and so I'm talking to you from my basement seed starting area. I've been down here working a little bit the past couple of days. If you kind of follow our story a little bit as a household, you know that we were planning on going on spring break. And in our last video and the one before, you saw Katie and I doing different things to get our camper ready for that trip. As it turns out, we were ready, but we did have to cancel our trip. So what happened was a world pandemic. So we basically do keep a pretty decent pantry where we do store 6 to 12 months of things that we regularly use, and then we rotate through them. So last year, you know, we canned peaches, and that's a year's supply of peaches for us. Of course, we share those peaches with our friends as well. But that there habit is basically our 1 year preserving and stocking of peaches, something we love. So that's just kind of how we operate, and we've got enough comfort in our lives that where we have the time to do that preservation and we have the ability to do that preservation, that we just go ahead and we live that way. Now what this has done is it's meant that during February leading up to where things started to look a little more serious in the United States, we've had the luxury of being able to continue generally with business as usual, keeping an eye on world events and the situation, as well as collecting information and communicating with the people we care about regarding what we see and how best to prepare. That type of time is an absolute luxury, an absolute privilege. Back in January, I don't remember the exact day, but it was toward the end of January, we were reading the news and we were following the news that something called coronavirus was in existence. We understood back in January that the province of Wuhan, China, was in fact struggling with this new novel coronavirus and was taking measures, and they were very clear back in January that they were having trouble with containment. Listening to the World Health Organization, it was not difficult to understand that this here particular virus could potentially reach pandemic proportions even back then. So, you know, the first thing we did is we spent time looking and listening to international experts who were closer to the situation and could report more information. I immediately reached out to my closest circle of people and let them know that I was watching this situation and monitoring it for information, letting them know that I saw some specific risks and hazards in the future. And back in January, I did literally say to my friends who were in the circle, hey, if you can go shopping, you know, and have a few staples on hand, it would be a really good idea. Some people call it a circle of care, some people call it a mutual aid circle, you know, whatever practice or tradition you come from, presumably it's a circle of people who are willing and committed to work together and to help each other and shore up each other's strength in trying times, when in fact we know that systems such as, you know, state and federal governments cannot necessarily do that for us. I think in a different time it might have been, you know, extended family that stuck together and you know, created that circle of care around members of the family. I don't know if that's really true or if that's just a myth, but I know as a member of the LGBTQ community, we have to engage in something called chosen family often because our original families reject us. And so this whole idea of creating a circle around you that cares and works interdependently together, this here, is certainly not a new idea, but if you're a member of the LGBTQ community, or if you are in some way estranged from your regular family who might otherwise provide that, or if your family is small and you need to extend it to make sure that there's more people involved in the care, creating a mutual aid circle or a circle of care or a survival circle. Basically, we used to joke around and call it your zombie apocalypse team, but all kidding aside, it's just your trusted people who you bring near to you when you know there's a time of urgency when we have to pull together. So more recently, recommendations have come down to do something called social distancing, or actually some of us are preferring to call it social spaciousness. We had some conversation with people in our group regarding that, because this is not the time to become antisocial. This is not the time to reduce your connections. Quite the opposite. This is the time you want to increase your connections, albeit probably electronically, over the phone, through the internet. It is considered unwise at this point to increase your connections in person. It is a good time to be sure you're in contact with people who are elder. We cannot just forget people who are elder. So, when we're practicing this idea of social distancing, be sure, to shout out, call on the people in your community who are elder and may need some check-ins, or support the people who do that, because it would not be healthy for our elders to have 5 different people knocking on their door. That's exactly not what should happen. Katie and I, we did go through a conversation last Saturday. Today is Wednesday. We went through a conversation last Saturday where we weighed out the situation regarding our responsibilities and social distancing. And, we were thinking about taking a trip down to Florida in our camper to the beach, which obviously, if you're listening to this video now, you know that sounds like the most ridiculous and inappropriate thing to do. However, on Saturday, we were still like, yeah, this doesn't look good. Maybe we shouldn't do this. And then we had a conversation about the privilege of it all. We are elder, but we are not in that higher risk age group. So, there's a little bit of health privilege, plus we have insurance. But as we weighed out the situation, we realized, wait a minute, we can't just jump in a vehicle and go across the country. Everywhere we stop, we are potentially dropping off the virus. Like, we could assume that we might be infected and not have symptoms, and we might pass this virus along. So additionally, we have friends here in St. Louis who are really trying to prepare. And since we wanted to be part of a mutual aid group, to create a group of care that would surround each other, we knew that just leaving when our group perhaps needs us the most is an irresponsible thing to do. So we made the decision to stay for a variety of reasons. It was the best decision. So we are definitely part of the Stay the Bleep at Home movement. If you have the ability and if you can, reducing potential transmission is super duper important. So we did go ahead and go to the store one more time yesterday morning, so that's Tuesday morning, because we needed some medicine, and we thought, well, while we're out, let's get some foods. While we were out in the store, we did use social distancing, giving everybody about 6 feet of space. It was really kind of nice. Everybody was doing that for each other, and it didn't seem mean-spirited or overly afraid. It didn't seem paranoid or mean-spirited. It just seemed like, okay, we got this reality here in St. Louis, let's just give each other space. So we, everybody at the store was yielding to each other with their carts and letting people through. It was really, for dystopian, it was really quite nice. The shelves were bare. Like, there were many bare shelves. So people who are trying to shop right now, know that you might show up and certain things are not available. And so that was definitely interesting. We did go ahead and pick up 1 bottle of 90% alcohol because the limit was 1, and we're like, hey, we have friends who might need this, so we picked up 1 bottle of alcohol. And then I think there was a limit on, was it aspirin? There might have been a limit on something else too. And we respected all limits. Oh, milk. Katie wanted milk, and there was a limit on milk. And we respected all limits. So that went out just fine. So we went shopping. When we came home from shopping, we of course washed our hands very, very well. But before we even did that, we recognized that there was the potential that we were handling things that might have virus on it. Do your own research, go to reputable sources, but the sources I'm reading do show that the virus can exist on surfaces. I'm not going to give any more specific information than that because I am not an epidemiologist and I am not a COVID-19 expert. But here's what I did do. I did my own research and I recognized that there was a need to employ some sanitation measures. So back behind me, you'll see some gallon jugs. I save those kind of for gardening purposes. And honestly, I'm not exactly sure, but they sometimes have a purpose, and so I saved some of them. Well, it turns out this time I used those gallon jugs to make sanitizer. Let me tell you. So the CDC gives recommendations to make bleach water, which can be used as a disinfectant. I'm going to link that information in the video description for you. It is a very inexpensive way to create a sanitizer, if you will. For every 5 gallons of water, the CDC recommends adding 1 cup of bleach. And so I don't need 5 gallons of sanitizer, so I figured I might need 2. Put water in the jug, and then less than a gallon. And then I went ahead and used 2 ounces of bleach because 1.6 ounces was just kind of hard to measure with my measuring tools. And I did not add anything else because you don't want to add certain chemicals to bleach and cause yourself a big problem. And now I have a gallon jug, 2 gallon jugs of bleach sanitizer. And read the CDC instructions, because if I get it wrong, I want you to be sure to have read your resources firsthand. But what I do is I have a dry rag. I don't start with a wet rag because I don't want to dilute the bleach. I start with a dry rag. I soak the dry rag with the sanitizer solution. And remember, I was shopping, so like I'm picking up with what we did with shopping. So when we came back from shopping, we had the cloth with the sanitizer solution. We wiped off the outsides of our packages. Before we brought them in the house, we just gave them a quick little wipe and we let them air dry, and then we brought them inside the house. Before getting in the car and after getting out of the car, we took the sanitizer and we wiped down all the parts of the car that we touched with our hands, and then we brought our groceries in. I've used that same sanitizer to go over surfaces in the house. So, I just grab a dry rag, load it up with sanitizer, wipe all my doorknobs, let it air dry. Let that sanitizer air dry on those surfaces. We still wash our hands really regularly, and we, since Saturday, put a thermometer downstairs by the front door, and we all check our temperature daily. Okay, folks, so, just remember, illness does not equal sin or badness. Remember that illness does not equal punishment. We hope we've dispelled all of that since the AIDS crisis of the 1980s. While a few people are hanging on to it, that is not true. And also, health does not equal intelligence. Healthiness does not equal goodness. Right now, this is a real numbers game. Many people could have been exposed to the virus, and just because someone ends up testing positive for a virus, that doesn't mean that they did something wrong, and just because someone ends up being negative, that doesn't necessarily mean they did something good. And also, don't forget, this virus does not have an ethnicity. We didn't call smallpox the European colonizer pox. We just called it smallpox. For this same reason, just because we suspect the virus existed in a certain region, we don't automatically assign an ethnicity or national origin to the virus. And it's not based on science. It's based on, I don't know, racism? It was just announced that Missouri just had their first fatality to COVID-19. The details are very sparse. Really not a whole lot of information is being given out right now in Missouri. Testing's not very widespread. There's just one testing facility for the entire St. Louis metro area at this point. There might be more getting ready to go up, but there is only one now. So, my friends, this is actually really, really serious, so please take care of yourself. Wherever you are, please take care of yourself. And don't forget to start that garden. So, my very crafty wife, she made me something. Now, before anybody goes absolutely mad on me about what I'm about to show you, please follow professional CDC, WHO research guidelines for PPE. This is something Katie made me. I'm going to go ahead and take it off now because I'm fearing it probably is muffling my voice. But check this out. Whew. Oh, that's tricky. All right, so Katie made this for me. And as it turns out, I didn't know this before this year, but did you know working with potting soil, you can get listeria? Okay, I did not know that until this year. And y'all, secret, I'm a science teacher, and I legit did not know that. So, wherever you come down on the mask debate, know that you don't want your droplets to be getting all over people. So while this won't protect you, this is not the kind of grade of mask that will protect you from other people. But, if I'm messing around with the potting soil and I'm trying not to get potting soil in my nose, this here is just right. Okay, siblings, I hope you're doing well. Please feel free to share in the comments, how you're doing. If there's a resource that you need, I know our group is really very pro-social right now. We want to share our resources. We want to share what's going on with us and make sure that everybody has their best life ahead of them. All right, back to seed starting because I've got a lot of time to work on the garden.